All right. Everybody get started. You can go ahead and call the meeting to order. We'll start off with roll call. All right. Amber Wright. Present. Ryan Mesh.
Present.
Chester Keith.
Present.
Jason Johnson.
Here.
Chris Long.
Here.
Matt Soft.
Present.
Orlando Accordo.
Present.
Ryan Harold. Sandy Nygaard.
Present.
Sharon Hollingsworth.
Present.
Phoebe Merrill.
Present.
Troy Hoke. You know, verbal or a type in the chat, please, Troy. Count 11, that's from Troy. We got you, Troy. Thank you. Count 11, we have quorum. Great. Thank you, Shelley. Moving on to the chairman's report. The first item in your packet is attachment 3A. This is the attendance report. Just as a reminder, if you reach the second meeting, the Bureau will reach out and confirm your interest in remaining on the committee. Moving on to the vacancy report. Currently, there's one vacancy for the education committee, a representative from next item on the agenda will be the Bureau report. So I will send this over to Chief Garcia.
Thank you. Well, good morning and welcome to anybody joining us that was not in the TEPI meeting. We're going to go ahead and reintroduce some of our staff members that are here today. For anybody that's just joining us, we have Karen Barnes in the room that is part of our and race team, and we're just thrilled to have her. We also have Brianna, our EMS and EMS for Children coordinator, as well as Marielle, who is our newest epidemiologist. So thank you for joining us. Not with us in the room right now are also Erin Henderson and Johnson, who have joined the team. Lots of new folks at the Bureau, and we look forward to you all getting to know them and working with them. So thank you for letting me introduce them. We do have some department updates that I will run through briefly. We went through most of them during the TEPI meeting, and I will skip over some of our slides. But I do want to acknowledge again that it's Crash Responder Safety Week, November 13th through the 17th. We've met with our ambulance safety work group over the last couple months, and this theme this year is protecting those who protect you. We really want to acknowledge all the responders who really risk their lives clearing roadways and aiding motorists. And it's just astounding to look at the numbers and the fact that we had over 120,000 traffic related crashes in the last year. So thank you very much to everyone out there that that takes care of people on the roadways, and we acknowledge you during Crash Responder Safety Week. Moving along through our updates. Huge shout out, especially to TEPI that just convened this morning for all of their input that helped make the new trauma dashboard possible. We have new trauma dashboards that went live in the last month that really highlight the work across the state with our 46 trauma centers that participate and input data. Alongside the new trauma dashboard that we are promoting, we also have a motor vehicle dashboard with some really interesting data, and we want to encourage everyone to check those out. Next up, we'll breeze by some of our most recent EMS updates. I want to remind folks, though, that we have an upgraded portal at ems.adhs.gov. I'm going to stop here for just a minute and let you know that we continue to add services to that website, and especially as we get ready for our new laws to go into effect January 1st. We have House Bill 2609 that has some new reporting requirements. The EMS portal is going to be a one-stop shop for some of those new requirements for CON holders, and we look forward to sharing some updates with you all on those new services that are available within that portal. Keep it on. A reminder that there are several bills that have passed in the last couple years that do require us to provide some education to the community in the coming months to get ready for some of the new requirements that go into effect in January. I also want to note that several of the bills that have passed in the last couple sessions also authorize the department to do exempt rulemaking to update ambulance certification and training rules. And so that's just something to keep in mind. Our next slide is a quick rules update. You all know, because you get to hear us talk about it every time we meet. We've recently completed some rulemaking. In 2022, we last updated scope of practice. In 2023, we also updated air ambulance rules and trauma center rules. And thank you to all the stakeholders that participated in that process. The pending rulemakings or the ongoing rulemakings are ground ambulance rules are still in process. The department back in August, September filed a notice of proposed rulemaking. We have received comments on that rules package and we continue to review those. At this time, the rules have not moved forward. They are not on a GERC agenda yet. And so we will keep you all updated on that timeline and when the ground ambulance rulemaking will move forward, but that is ongoing at this time. Our next rulemaking that we're getting ready for is the certification training rules that must be reviewed again in the 5-year review that was most recently due, and then to align with new statutory requirements. So putting that on your radar. And let me go ahead and pause here on the Lockstone Leave Behind, since that is agenda item 4C. Gail, do you want to take this one?
Sure. So just a quick reminder that the Naloxone Leave Behind program is live. We do have a few event agencies that are already in the process of distributing these kits out in their communities. So if you are interested in participating in the program, please reach out to Adam Rodriguez. The program includes an online training module that was produced in conjunction with the University of Arizona. It also includes the kits that you would get with naloxone in them, some resource cards, and also demonstration of how to get that. I see Adam is doing some show and tell. So those who have not seen the kit, this is what the kit looks like. And it's really easy in terms of data collection. There is a little tag that you can see is a QR code. The only data elements that we ask to be collected is when this kit is given out. That's the crew is just scan the QR code and collect officially their agency name and then zip code where they're giving the kit out. So we're just looking for very basic data elements. We don't want data to be a impediment to getting these kits out to the community.
Very cool. Next up, we have NREMT updates. I'm not sure if we have TJ on the line to share just some brief update on what's coming down the pike.
Yep, I am here. Good morning. Real quickly, I think I've talked about this for the last few meetings. There is a sunsetting of the NREMT psychomotor examination that will it has been moved up. It will take over as the common practice on July 1st, 2024, and there will be no more psychomotor testing for the National Registry as of that date, similar to what they did with the BLS sunsetting a few years ago. There still is a state requirement for a comprehensive psychomotor testing. We'll still be using the National Registry sheets and continuing as we have with the BLS model until we just set up some work groups and maybe look at what we're going to do moving forward. They're also adjusting the National Continued Competency Program with those who have expiration dates at March 31st, 2026 or later. They're going to be doing things based on some evidence-based guidelines in training. And the number of hours isn't scheduled to change at all, but the content and the number of hours associated with each topic is scheduled to change. So they have a proposed schedule right now with a table of different topics. They've removed a lot of the subtopics and stayed with the broader views, and those are all available for review on their website currently. I got the AEMT voluntary accreditation. They have endorsed the items that were released by NASEMSO. Those will be required elements for AEMT programs as of July 1st, 2024. but the voluntary accreditation process will not probably begin until January 1st of 2025 with co-aims. So National Registry will be requiring the minimum student competencies, but that accreditation process will still be voluntary for the foreseeable future and probably will not start until 2025, according to the last update from co-aims. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Not hearing any. Thank
Okay.
you, Jake.
Thank you.
Awesome. Jumping ahead to item 4E, I think we can go to slide 17. We are working on a strategic planning needs assessment, and I think we've shared this process with you all. We're working closely with the 4 regional councils and associations in the state. Our process is to listen, learn, plan, and prioritize, and then do. Our goal is to, once we have feedback through the surveys and the focus groups that we've been working on, we'll be going to each region and working on the strategic plan at the regional and state level. And we will be bringing those draft plans to our committees to review and adopt before 2025. We will continue to keep you all updated on that process. I have to give a big thank you to the region and all the stakeholders that have participated in the process so far. We've had well over 1,000 participants when you look at the number of responses we've received through the surveys and focus group process. So thank you very much. And for our last item, I think we'll skip over this slide. I can give some quick updates on our recent work group, unless anyone else would like to do the honors.
Chief Garcia, looking at me, I can cover these quickly. So we have had 2 different work groups that came out of EMS Council. The first was looking at behavioral health alternative destinations. And so we're really excited that we have made good progress with this. The first thing we needed to figure out is what were the barriers to actually implementing this. So we identified the main barriers and really have been able to address those in our first 2 meetings. You can see the reference statutes that allow us to actually do this work, which is taking patients directly to behavioral facilities. We have a 3rd work group scheduled on December 11th. We are excited that some of the health plans actually reached out directly to the Bureau saying that they were really interested in this program and wanted to participate. So the last work group that is scheduled, the meeting agenda, if you see it, is a little bit different. They wanted it to be really focused questions for their health plan to kind of come and hopefully answer questions for EMS providers. So we are excited to move that forward, and hopefully after the December 11th meeting, that will be the final work group for this project. And the next is the ambulance safety work group. We have had 2 meetings so far, and really, I think, have had some great discussion. There is a position statement, if anyone has not seen that, we can share, that was published last year on decreasing licensed sirens responses and transport. And this was really signed by 14, all the national EMS and fire-related agencies across the country. And so the goal for this work group is to have a couple things. One is to really look at EMR training, as we do know that this is now going to be part of Arizona's practice when it was not before. So we're looking at both the medical component of training, which we're going to ask this group to provide feedback on later today, as well as drivers training, just to ensure safety as we start seeing EMRs working on ambulances. And then the next piece is looking at kind of National Crash Responder Week, as Chief Garcia mentioned. What are some things that we can do to improve safety? And we do realize that there is, with response time requirements, we often get that question, why are you talking about life siren responses and decreasing those? But there is an opportunity, certainly with transport, to decrease the number of licensed sirens transport. And the articles that have been published are pretty useful with this. So if anyone is interested, we can provide those resources. I believe Shelley has published all of those on our website as well. So we can punch in the direction if they wanted to review the meeting slide best. Any questions about either of those work groups? Thank you. Other slide. I just printed this off.
I'm not sure if we have Carissa on for the last agenda item. Before we pass it back, just a shout out that we will be having House Bill 2609 virtual meetings with each region. Those will be hosted via Google December 4th through the 7th. And again, thank you to our regions for distributing that information. I won't go through the rest of them. Shelley will just distribute out the advice.
Hi, Rachel. I'm on.
Carissa?
Hi, everyone. Good morning. So Vattel and I have started working with the Game and Fish Department. The Bureau has noted an increase of ATV incidents over the last few years, and so we wanted to work on some outreach. So we've worked with the Game and Fish Department, who already has a program called Quail Kids. And so we're working with them to kind of update that program. We worked with Mount Graham Regional Medical Center, and they did a bit of a pilot program to share that at an event they had. And so we're following up with them, and we're going to, we're just in the starting phases right now. So we'll give you guys any updates as we go on and get this started. And they'll be posted to our website. So if any of you are interested, we have a couple of facilities that are part of the work group that we've started. I don't know if I'd call it a work group, but the group that's interested in doing the ATV outreach. But if anyone's interested, feel free to reach out to Vattel or myself, and we can get you guys involved in that. Thank you.
Awesome work, Carissa. Thank you so much. I think that concludes the Bureau report.
Thank you very much. So now I'll move on to our discussion and action item. The first one will be to discuss them and approve the draft minutes from the July meeting, if I can get a motion.
Second.
Thank you. Shelley's going to scroll through these. They're in your packet as well. Give folks just a moment. All right, any discussion? Okay, hearing no discussion, I'll move to a vote. All in favor of approving the minutes? Say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? And any abstaining? Wonderful. Motion passes. Second action item, discuss amend and approve the EMR training curriculum. This is attachment 5C in your packet. If I can get a motion. Ryan for first, who for second? Matt. Dave, yeah, we want to.
Sure, I can give a little background on this. So the Bureau has been asked to bring forward the committee first. We're going to also review this at PMD to start getting some feedback on a potential draft curriculum for EMRs. So as part of House Bill 2609, there is the opportunity for EMS agencies in rural areas of less than 10,000 or for interfacility transport to utilize an EMR as part of their response model. And so as part of that, the Bureau does need to add to our scope of practice and certification level to EMR level. And so we are going to need to open our rules to address this, but wanted to start getting some feedback. The January 1st timeline when this can go live is coming up very rapidly. So we appreciate a huge thank you to Dewey and several others and Adam for really kind of collating and putting these draft curriculum together. This is our first opportunity to kind of get some of the feedback, and we are definitely, once the rule package opens, that will go through the normal process. But we definitely want to make sure we start getting feedback so we know what to hopefully have put together with stakeholders. So this is kind of the initial draft curriculum. You can see here that part of the requirements above and beyond just typical EMR certifications, there are very specific things listed that is that states that EMR program means a program that includes at least the following: emergency vehicle driver training, cardiopulmonary resuscitation training, AED training, and training in the use of non-invasive diagnostic devices, including blood glucose monitors and blood oximeters, and training and obtaining use of vital signs, including blood pressure, pulse, and respiratory rate. So this training does require a little bit beyond what this national baseline is for EMR. So that's why when you look at the hours, it's a little bit higher than what the hour requirement is at the national level. So that's kind of the background about this. And then the page 3 looks at the certification at national level as well as continuing education as well. That is the background. So we will pick up, open up to any comments or insights. Yes,
so besides the extra stuff that's required from the statutes, excuse me, Where does the rest of this come from? Did it come from the educational guidelines?
I can answer that. For folks I haven't met online, I'm Dewey Anderson. I'm one of the regional EMS coordinators with the Bureau. Just some quick background. Prior to moving down here 3 years ago, I was coordinating a fire science and EMS program at a community college for 10 years. And my program did occasionally do some EMR training. To answer your question, Brian, I pulled a lot of this from my curriculum back in Iowa. We were highly regulated by the state. The EMS programs were, and that's where we didn't do quite as many hours as required here, but that was the parameter that was given to me by Dr. Bradley, the amount of hours.
In terms of the content.
And content, yes, the content is pretty much straight across what my program did, and we had students take national registry, and it met their criteria.
So how do you plan on implementing that curriculum in the rules? Because it's got to go in the rules, right? Are you gonna have that by reference, have this title something in by reference, or are you gonna write the whole thing? And this will become important for the next one too. Or do you plan on putting this whole thing into the rule?
We want to gather feedback on this draft curriculum today because we will be starting the rulemaking process. And as part of the rulemaking process, there'll be an opportunity to gather some more input and comments. But for the purposes of today, it's just throwing it up on the screen, getting it in front of you before we start to actually draft it into any rule to answer your question.
This is TJ. Most of our rules right now just point to the national standards, and we have to address some specific items for the program. So I think the individual items that are unique to the EMR certification, we actually have more content specified at the EMR level than any other certification level, will probably be in the 305 section. But the national standards pretty much include all the items that are presented in this document. I think the primary reason for presenting it in this format was there were a few different programs that had requested a specific draft curriculum just to use as reference. So in rule, I think it would refer back to national standard curriculum as we have with the other certification levels, and then include the specific components in the 305 section of the training center rules, if that helps.
That answer your question?
That answers my question.
Okay. Yeah.
Roseanne, our rule writer, had just asked we want to make sure, because this is such a significant change for Arizona, adding potentially two new levels, one in its certification, the other in endorsement, that we really make sure that we start getting as much public input as possible. So as much feedback we can getting people to review this, if they think that these are going to be some barriers, thoughts, or, certainly, that a lot of people come from other states. And we appreciate what has been done. Many states have EMRs as a part of their system, and a critical care endorsement that we'll look at next. Many other states have been doing this for quite a few years. So bringing that expertise here is helpful to get the background.
Just one question. I don't remember this off the top of my head, but in the 305 section, do we outline specific numbers of hours by content for other certifications? I don't recall that we do, or do we?
Not paramedic, but I
Yeah.
think the others do.
They have specific hours outlined per content area.
Did we write it to?
Not for content. The only thing that's specified in those areas is specific hours, and sometimes there's a designation between clinical and vehicular hours versus simple didactic.
Yeah.
And we did fix that. I think we did actually do that for paramedic too. Initially, we weren't going to do that, but I think we did make it for paramedic.
Okay. Yeah, I would just want that to be consistent with how we have our other rules. But other than that, I don't want.
And the long-term goal would be when rules reopen, this would become a new column along with EMT, AMR, and the rest of those, with the scope of practice that will still have to be determined.
There is a national scope of practice that we've tried to align in the last few years as best as possible with the national scope. We've obviously taken the feedback from PMD and MDC with us, so that component, all those things have to kind of, they'll be open simultaneously. Just we have to adjust scope of practice, training, and certification. So it kind of, three different areas that have to be updated all at once to allow them to move on.
Article 2, Article 3, and Article 5.
So just to clarify, this will be something that will be available for people to use or not use. The rule will refer to the specific items that are separate, and then the national education standards and the guidelines. That's the way it's going to be.
In terms of how it would be codified, whether you could use this, or I'm not sure I understood your question, Brian.
So TJ just implied that in the rule to write the specific things that are required under the statute, and then reference the national education standards, which EMR is already in the statute, so that may be covered in there. And this would just be something that would be available for a program to use if they so desired, or is this?
Yeah.
Or is this to have a reference that would require everybody to use this curriculum?
No, if I could chime in again, hopefully I can remove any confusion on that. The reference to national standards going to be there for all certification levels, just as it is today. But in House Bill 2609, they spelled out specific content of curriculum, and this is the most that we have on any certification level. So there's no such language for EMT, AEMT, or paramedic in these categories, which is why we are specifically referencing it in rule. And in 305, that's where we account for those special considerations or requirements for those individual courses. 304 is the primary resource that we're using for the training programs, and that's where it refers to the national standards on clinical and vehicular time, and core content refers back to the national standards. So the items that have been offered today as example or curriculum are potential components that programs could use. We just wanted to make an illustrative point for those who were interested so they could provide some feedback on the potential topics and other things that might need to be addressed in our rulemaking. But I think with just addressing the specific EMR content in 305, it resolves a lot of those potential issues. But again, we're looking for as much feedback as possible, especially from the educators in the state.
I don't see EpiPen on the scope. Is that something that was specifically not considered for EMRs, or maybe not?
Do you know if that's in the national at all?
That I'm not sure on. I don't know for sure. TJ?
We make teachers learn.
Yeah, they had left it off of most of the standard curriculum. There's been a lot of discussion at that level, especially with the recent addition or emergency upgrades in scope for providing vaccinations and other things like that. But they had a significant amount of discussion on it and have left it off currently.
How close is this to what used to be the national standard for ECA, emergency care attendant? Because they had a scope that was nothing past oxygen, but if it was available to them, but basically that's where it.
That I don't know because I've never heard of that. So I can't speak to it.
Okay.
It's certainly one of the things that we just want for everyone's awareness, because sometimes we had some questions that are kind of the Bureau, it's going to affect the majority of the state as it's only in very rural areas, but the way that this could potentially be deployed would be an interfacility unit that is going through, Maricopa County as an example. They're doing interfacility transport with EMR and a paramedic. If that patient deteriorates, historically, the ambulance, if they're decent distance from the hospital, may pull over, and the EMT may go in the back and help provide patient care. With this model, you would have an EMR as your second medical intensive. So this is something to keep in mind in that regards as well. The other component is for the more rural areas where historically they've had an EMT and a paramedic as their medical responders. If they were attached to an ambulance, would be the only responding unit. And now the responding units would be potentially an EMT and an EMR, a paramedic and EMR. So there is a little bit of just kind of awareness that we are changing to some degree the level of care that is able to be provided. So we want to make sure that in that training to help support the patient to maybe get affected.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see some stuff on here that, I don't know that would be considered standard of care now, things like mouth to mouth and stuff that I don't know would like specifically be appropriate anymore. But I think that getting additional comments would be important for some of our local training programs. Those are the types of things I see in here that may need to be addressed. Does this require any other specific action, Gail, today?
I realized we had it on here as a estimate and approved.
Yeah.
It really, our goal is to really get discussed and amend, get feedback. Honestly, this is, because this is, it's got to go through the rule writing process. We just want to make sure that we get as much feedback, especially because, the educators are pretty well represented in this group. So making sure that we get feedback. So things like that, mouth to mouth, train on that. But then EMR curriculum.
Yeah. Do you want feedback from groups in a specific format? Is there anything specific you'd be looking for, or just maybe like a list of recommendations if someone has them? Is there anything specific you're looking for?
I would say any feedback. So outside of a text message, that's my only request.
Yeah.
I get to figure out how to do those. So yeah, any type of feedback, written email is fine. We just really want to make sure that we get good feedback. Just this is such a big change for the state that we use the opportunity to really get good feedback. I mean, we've got time, so we don't have permission yet to open the rules. We are hoping that that's going to come pretty soon after January 1st, I think.
Yeah.
Because technically that can go live January 1st. So recognizing the holidays are coming up.
Right. Without this being in rule yet, does it really go live January 1st? Can EMRs be operating into those new capacities without a scope of practice or without a state recognition?
That's the challenge. We need to try to get this in play as quickly as possible. Yeah.
So the answer right now, that would be no.
The answer right now is that there's a very limited pathway and not a lot of guidance. So it opens up a lot of liability without this type of a standard available to fall back on. Yeah.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, and definitely that's, why we kind of got the app from Roseanne to get feedback from the big statewide committees, and just why that the hope that we could pull together something relatively quickly to put out to the writing process.
And then I guess last question, sorry, would the state be that, would there be a AZ EMR certification the way that there is an AZ EMT or paramedic?
Yes.
That's a little question or chat, Sandy. What are the current training hours for the ES?
PJ, I'll let you take that one.
I'm sorry, I could barely hear her.
The training hours for EMTs.
For EMT, the minimum number of hours currently is 130.
So would there ever, and it's just a curiosity, be a pathway to go from EMR to EMT without having to do the whole thing? Because you've already knocked out 2/3 of the hours and most of the training.
Well, yeah, and that's the design of the EMS agenda for the future, and the new iteration on the EMS agenda 2050. The view is that you're developing and growing, kind of, for lack of a better term, kind of like a set of nesting dolls, where you start off with EMR, move towards EMT to AEMT, and then eventually to paramedic, and you're building on that knowledge that you've obtained before. So we had back in the long ago a series of various steps that you could take between EMT and paramedic. We'd have the IEMT and then an IEMT cardiac and different iterations there. I think it would make sense to have some sort of a bridge program that we could establish in the future where students could move between those certifications easier. Some of the high school programs based will actually start with EMR and then transition to EMT, so they're covered in the same format during the same course. I know Pima Community College has taken that approach. They're actually one of the largest EMR educating groups that we have in the state currently. So I think that makes perfect sense, especially given some of the different programs that we have set up currently. And I think that's an idea for exploration moving forward.
Thanks.
Another question, is there an age limit for EMR?
There's not an age limit for National Registry for test taking at any level. The state of Arizona does require age 18 for certification.
Should we want to add that into this? But if all the other requirements are 18, we want to add that into this as well, at least for the state of Arizona.
All the certifications already covered.
I just have kind of a question on that. This is Sandy. So this is EMR specifically for driving an ambulance. And just a concern. So we are going to allow an 18-year-old to drive an ambulance. Just checking on that.
We have that going on today.
Yeah, currently now. So-
Well, I'm sure that it's got to be a huge impact on insurance.
So there's, as part of our stakeholder group that we've had, there's been quite a bit of discussion about just workforce shortages, and the feedback we've gotten from several of our stakeholders are, you know, there's the workforce challenges. How do you recruit people into EMS when you start younger? And some of the conversation has certainly been, you know, concerns regarding the age of 18 to drive. But then also pretty much all the providers said that they hire individuals at 18 to drive, and they do recognize that there are challenges with that, but that is kind of the standard. I aged myself when I said, well, when I was hired 20 years ago to work in an ambulance, you have to be 21 to drive an ambulance. Those times changed. So for the first couple of years, I was always in the back of an ambulance. I wasn't old enough to drive. But that have transitioned many years ago. And so whether it be in the fire service or private entities, all of them have provided feedback that they do hire at each. So I don't think this changes that process. I see a chat from Sharon. There's states that are currently looking at lowering the age to 16 or 17. So the National Association of State EMS Officials, the Medical Directors Council, so 2 weeks ago, we had quite a bit of discussion about EMR and EMT age limits. And so there are states that allow people to be state certified as EMT at 15 or 16. So there are definitely states that allow that. So an age limit is probably something we do want to include, whatever that may be, we should have that enrolled, that it's not ambiguous, because we do see some of that transitioning a little bit at a national level as well.
18 seems young to me. I would not, I would not support going over to that.
Yeah. I think it's pretty few states that have moved to 16, not very much.
So, and then one other question back to your question that you came at with Matt in terms of, could someone go live with this potentially January 1st? So as part of the House bill, there is an option for the agency's medical director to determine what that training looks like. So that would be an option for an agency, but that medical director would need to approve not only their clinical training, but also their driver's training as well, because that is a component of that. So from a medical director perspective, I don't feel that I'm qualified to approve, emergency vehicle driver's operations, but that is part of the House bill. So I know that there are some entities that are looking at that as an option to utilize their medical director to approve their training, but that training must also include the driver's training.
So will we have any issues instituting something that may have a slightly expanded scope from what DMRs are currently generally doing in our state? Like as far as like grandfathering them into stuff without having maybe had some of this training? Is that something that we would need to address?
It's a question if they were previously approved by their medical director.
Yeah, I mean, we have EMRs now in the state. So, I mean, if we're all of a sudden giving them this scope of practice, do we require any additional training, or do we just say, your medical director says you're good, you're good?
So the medical director pathway is specific for if you're working for that agency and when you've had that medical director. So they move agencies under that pathway. So if you move agency or that medical director changes, you lose that certification. So that is something to be aware of in terms of that component. In terms of current EMRs, TJ, I know you did a lot of work pulling data. Do you want to speak on some of that data?
Yeah, so we've had, I think total, well, at least in the history that I can access, 419 individuals who have sat for national registry testing. We currently have 150 nationally registered EMRs within the state, but there is no state certification. So technically there's no scope of practice that could be assigned to those individuals because they are not certified by the state.
Right.
This would change for it. It's something that we could do now where we grandfather individuals who hold that in, but we have no measure. We didn't approve any of those training programs and really are unaware what content was part of that. There are 19 different programs that have provided training and cleared individuals to sit for national registry testing, but only 10 of those were attached to an existing state of Arizona approved training center. So I think it could be very possible to use those individuals who went through a state of Arizona approved program and evaluate them on an individual basis. As I mentioned previously, Pima Community College was the largest educator of those students, and I'm very familiar with the curriculum and the program that they used. And I think it would be fairly easy to assess that population, see what their training consisted of, and with medical director approval, perhaps allow them to seek state of Arizona certification if they still hold a current national registry certification. But again, I think that's an easy problem to solve with some review based on the folks that are out there. And I don't think those populations are going to be that large that it would cause a big problem.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like very many people. So.
Yeah.
We already have a roadmap for that, right? We, like 2012, when the paramedic scope of practice changed, we said that you had X number of years to get the additional training required. So I would presume something similar could be done.
Yeah, at the bridge program, that anyone that wants to do the update. Yep.
Henry.
I can't see the answering.
Oh, right.
In the room.
DJ, do you know out of that 400 plus, whether that was also includes the former FR, or is that all EMR since?
That's all EMR designation under National Registry. So that's starting, I want to say 2007 was the designation point for that. And you've had other ones previous to that I think were transitioned, but again, that was a national registry designation. We didn't have that data within the state, so I'm relying entirely on them for data. And I think they had all of those folks that had some sort of iteration previous with whatever term was used. All of those were consolidated under the EMR moniker, I think in 2007, similar to what they did with the IEMTs and all of the different designations between EMT and paramedic. They kind of put them all into the category of AEMT and came up with an appropriate standard for those individuals.
Thank you.
Thanks, TJ. Right. Thank you, TJ, for providing clarification on that. That was very helpful. So it sounds like what's most useful to the Bureau would be stakeholder feedback and timely because
Send all your text messages to Dr. Wright.
yeah. I will compile them. Okay, well, I think since we don't have anything to actually vote on this one, if there's no further discussion, I'll go ahead and move to the next agenda item. The next one will be similar discussion. It sounds like probably also nothing to vote on today is the critical care endorsement training curriculum. And that's also in your package as well. This is obviously a little bit larger. I don't know if you want to say anything more on this one, Gail. This to me looks to be a mirror of the IBSD curriculum. So
So, just a little bit of background on this one as well. As part of the rule package that is currently going through looking at critical care reimbursements and also critical care transport. I think many of you have heard me ask, since I started at the Bureau in 2019, to please try to create some type of critical care pathway for the state of Arizona. And so we have finally gotten permission to hopefully start moving in this direction. The goal, which many other states have done, is to use a critical care endorsement. So you would be a certified paramedic and then have a critical care endorsement on top of that. And so that is the pathway that the state would proceed with. And so we wanted to, again, a huge thank you, Adam. I know you did a ton of work in this with several other Bureau staff that helped as well. So a big thank you to kind of start pulling the data together. Do you want to give a little bit back?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Dr. Rice, you're right. This is largely reflective of the ISBC, which is the accrediting body for the BCC, oh my God, the Board of Certifying for Transport Paramedics. It's critical care transport paramedics. And because there is no national standard, because the National Registry doesn't formally recognize critical care certification, the majority of the content is reflective of that now. The BCC does do a series of critical care certifications that have slightly differing topic outline, mainly FPC, the flight FPC version of it, and the CTPC, critical care paramedic, and that's just two different flavors of the same thing with the difference in the environment. One is meant for the ground critical care paramedic, and the other is meant for the flight environment. Also mirrored is the training, continuing education and training requirements. We didn't feel like those needed to be adjusted. I think that they have a good handle on that. So it's this document probably isn't fully inclusive of all of the skills that you might like to see, but it would be worth going onto their website and having a look at some of the types of different exam certifications and creating like an aggregate of these tests to represent what it is that we'd like to see represented on that. I hope that's helps you guys understand what that.
thank you, Adam. Yeah, I mean, I think looking at what you have here currently, it looks like it doesn't include some of the FTC curriculum items, like the flight physiology component.
Yeah.
So that would be a discussion, I think, whether or not we felt that should be a recommended requirement. I think that a lot of our folks would be operating in that environment potentially.
Just hand up from Orlando.
Hello, good morning. To Adam, is there any task force working on this, Adam, or is there going to be is that you already planned this to have task force to review this curriculum?
Task force.
Yeah.
Like the work-
Could you guys go?
Yeah, definitely. As we start the rule writing process, we will be gathering participants to be able to be part of a work group for these types of items. This is just really early stage, trying to get it in front of you guys again to get some early feedback.
And Dr. Gaither did provide some data conflict where he will, I think, join it at noon, but I can summarize a little bit of feedback that he provided. He just looked at kind of the didactic versus clinical time. Recommended, it looked like it ended up being about the same time, but just shifting from those hours a little bit. But his recommendation was 135 hours of classroom time, but increasing the number of clinical hours in the ITU and field setting. And also had a recommendation that in terms of the number of hours for each area, starting under detailed content outline, potentially with the content, but not necessarily the number of hours for that, with his recommendation on that sheet.
Yeah, that would be awesome, because I know a couple of our critical care paramedics now that are teaching here at Phoenix College would be interested of joining that workforce and kind of fine tune some of these numbers with hours and didactic and clinical. I know they talked to me about this, and they're willing to, if there is a work group that they can like to join in.
And yeah, thank you. He specified just kind of under the clinical and field training, not stating necessarily numbers, types of ICU hours, just looking at ICU hours in general, some feedback, and then under recertification, are we looking to make this consistent with the IBSC or not? So kind of looking at that time frame.
Yeah. think the only other notes I had on this was currently, we don't, like, similar to the age limit question in the previous one, this doesn't necessarily outline any specific requirements for any previous experience, though I know that IDSC recommends, I don't think that they require it, but recommend 3 years of experience. Before you can take the exam. So someone fresh out of paramedic school probably should not be necessarily, probably not, probably not. But we just, you know.
Yeah, so day one paramedic is eligible to take this test.
They don't recommend it. No. So anyways, if we want to put something in there, so you have to maybe be an Arizona paramedic for 2 years before you can be a critical care. I don't know if we want to put something in there, but that would be one thing that I would maybe consider discussing is experience as a paramedic before being able to take this. And I have some other.
Well, who do I send the recommendation to? Is this gonna be, who's gonna be responsible for gathering that workforce? Do you know, is it Adam or?
Yeah, I can help compile this information for sure.
Okay, and Adam, I'll just send your email to the 2 critical care paramedics here. And then they would love to help out on some of these things.
Sure.
And then a couple things before we get to TJ, because I see your hand raised. So this would go through just like with any other rule writing process that everyone's fully aware of, the normal process. So we're not going to not have that typical process. We just really want to start getting feedback. So I don't think we would have like informal work groups because we have a very set process that the rule writing goes through, but we're happy to get any feedback. That's really why we're kind of bringing it out to the committee. Let me get TJ and then back to you, Matt. TJ?
Just really quickly, to tag on to this, it's, I think, a relevant point. We had the 4th quarter Interstate Commission for EMS Personnel Practice meeting yesterday with the compact, and they're going to be working on some position papers, 3 of them specifically, and one of them is tied directly to this endorsement and trying to unite the perspective of all the compact states using these endorsements, especially for the flights. And we've got more of the states around us joining that compact. So that might be some relevant resources on that side as well.
Thank
you. Yes.
What does it mean for the word endorsement? Why is it, like EMR, it's not an EMR endorsement or a paramedic endorsement. Is this going to be a separate column as well? Like Arizona will recognize a critical care paramedic. So I'm just curious why are we adding that extra word? Like, why is it not just critical care paramedic?
I think there's no national certification for it, right? There's no national certification for, it's just this other entity. That was the other question I had, was whether or not we would require the certifying exam. It's not listed in the curriculum, but it seems appropriate that you would require the FCC or CCC.
Unless Arizona's going to create its own.
Yeah, I don't think so. I doubt it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yes.
So would
You recognize like the processes they have the current exams already.
It's all the same exam.
what about for Pittsburgh has its own like unique EMTP? Is that
All one-off hospitals have their own critical care training programs, but they're not widely
No,
recognized.
definitely not.
I think it would be challenging to accept those, in my mind. Yeah, Brian.
I think part of the reason to do this, like, as called an endorsement, is that if you were to just take a card and say you're a certified critical care paramedic, now would require statutory changes because that term is not in the statute. Paramedic. So by doing this endorsement, put it down in the little corner of the card or whatever, or you have a stamp that you put on it, or however that works out, avoid having to go back to the statute and get a certified main critical care paramedic.
Noreen has her hand raised. Noreen?
Yeah, that was a recommendation from our rule writer. One way to do that would be to, there are 2 certifications that you can get from allied health professionals currently in Arizona, and some county colleges are using that as a critical care paramedic certification. And one way to do that would be to say if a paramedic came in with this certification and pass the exam, they could come in and get an endorsement under permission of their medical director. We would accept that and that would be one way to put it on their paramedic card. And that was a recommendation from the rule writer from a regulatory standpoint, how to do this.
And then I had one more question from you, Adam. I see that when you put this together, you wrote approved review course or something like that. You meant that to be an IVSD approved review course, correct?
That is part of the continuing education requirement that you go after a specific critical care review course. So
Yeah, exactly. So, but I think we should specify that the recommended review course is not recommended by the DHS. It's recommended by the
right.
third party, I guess. And I think that's how they have it written in there, but they have a whole list of review courses that they've approved.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Hand raised online. Hey, you left.
Hey, good morning. I guess just another clarifying question. So for current providers who already hold their FPC, would they qualify for this endorsement? Because I guess that's the fear from the flight world, is if this becomes a requirement for every critical care vehicle, which is every aircraft in the state, would there be any retro training or would they be covered under their current FPC?
Not adding anything extra. Like if you add your FPC, like FPC would be.
Yeah, there isn't anything
defining
extra,
line.
yeah.
And what is the point of even adopting the endorsement? Why not just make it a requirement to hold one?
Because currently there's no scope of practice associated with that. Like technically having that having that certification in Arizona currently doesn't necessarily expand your scope of practice as a paramedic. So there isn't, you would need to create that endorsement to say that you have, not only can you operate under this scope of practice as a paramedic, but now you can operate under this expanded scope of practice as a critical care paramedic. So that's the reason to have the endorsement.
It'd be kind of like all your interfacility drugs would automatically fall under critical care instead of having to have individual endorsements through medical.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Different.
And that's all gonna come down to how the rule gets written, if it required, whether it's gonna require CCPC or whether it's, and you add in FPC, or if a program teaches this curriculum, do they get endorsed? That's all gonna come down to how to write what's the requirements are in the rule.
Yeah, to get some like feedback on that, like even in the flight world, if someone is hired as a flight paramedic and trained, they work under critical care or flight paramedicine, and they have 1 year to obtain that certification. So technically, if they've only been flying for a month, they're already working under that scope, but they're not FPC or CCPC necessarily. So that would, there's going to have to be.
That should not change their scope of practice. Then if
That's what I'm
occurred,
saying. If you make it a requirement for the endorsement to be able to practice, there has to be kind of a parallel world. That being the gold standard, sure, to get that endorsement, but where you're saying like you have this curriculum
You gotta have-
complete also makes.
you gotta have that column out there on the Arizona scope of practice for critical care paramedic out there that defines the scope of practice. That's where that's
The
gonna come
danger of
from, not the
making it
curriculum.
mandatory to pass that through the FTC test may cause some blurring.
Sure. Well, I think that those are companies that specifically allow that. I think if it was in statute, they wouldn't be able to allow that.
But they wouldn't technically be able to allow that now either. They can't have a paramedic working outside of the Arizona paramedic scope of practice, regardless if they're FPC or
Yeah, so
CCPC
right
now.
now, it's like
So
individual companies may require that FTC exam. Like they can even say that you don't have to have it.
Right.
So you can operate forever in Arizona currently without ever having to have a FTC certification. It's just that this would require that now.
and then that would protect that extra skill set that is being allowed.
Right. So they could still fly and operate under their regular paramedic license on it. They could still fly. You just couldn't perform that additional scope. Yes, exactly. Okay, so similar, right?
Yeah,
Feedback?
no, this is great. Yeah, great feedback. You can email anyone within the Bureau. We'll kind of collect that all and really help you to kind of put together a good product to move forward. So thank you for taking the time to review that and provide feedback.
Okay, great. There was no action required on that. If there's no additional discussion, I'll go ahead and move forward. Okay, thank you all for that. I have a couple training curriculums to pull up. The first one is discuss, amend, and approve the pediatric teacher training. This is attachment 5D. If I could get a motion for this one. Great. So I really appreciate all the time that everyone took to come together and meet and put together these trainings. They're in your packet. I don't know if we want to kind of read through them. My packet didn't print all of them. Remember how many times we went through this one, once or twice?
There's 20, I think.
Yeah, I think we came together 2 times.
Yeah. Sorry, this is the product of the EMS Council, that ended up on, your guys' agenda for approval. Was there a specific question about the training? Sorry.
No, we're just kind of going through it.
Oh,
And
right, yeah, this was
talking
the,
through it.
sorry, this was the training where, this was the, request to field the training gaps from one of the PACES members, that we had a work group, and this was the production of it. And, we wanted to utilize, training in and of itself, but we also wanted to highlight, some of the resources that are on, our EMSC data website, for supplemental information. There's fantastic resources here in that last, in the linked in one of the last slides there. Shelley, can you go just a little bit more, one more slide? Yes, that's that link there has the access to this ready for distribution style toolkit for pediatrics with respect to features, but there are several other toolkits being produced, and so we'd like to kind of mirror this along and keep producing those as we get those toolkits in from our team.
Yeah, this is super well. There's some good videos and additional references there. The only slide I think I want to throw up for the committee to look at is maybe the one towards the end, the pharmacology, just to make sure that it looks. I think it's the one slide that isn't just sort of informational, but this really should match exactly what's in the TTTG for this. I just wanted to make sure that it looks appropriate to everyone. We just took it straight from the text.
And just a shout out, I have used these slides in addition to other ones to specifically do teacher education. I got really good feedback. So I think they did very well on that slide. So I think you need to put that together. Yeah, they did some nice kind of very TS specific elements that are covered here.
Yes, the formula, you know, dilution and some other things that maybe you wouldn't think about. So I have no other additional comment on that. And any further discussion?
Dr. Is there any mentioning of the dilution and concentration preferences for the bedazzler administration? Whether it be IN or IM?
We have it, IM is the preferred route.
And, well, I guess my question more specifically is that if they have a more diluted concentration and they're not able to give IM because it's too many mLs in a particular muscle in pediatric, how would they get around that perhaps?
I don't think you can.
They would have to go IV then, really, the only choice.
Yeah, I mean, I think the standard of care certainly is IM administration. So I think, I don't know of anyone that's carrying something that's too dilute, but.
It's happened several times because of shortages.
Yeah, I can see with
So-
shortages potentially.
And some, I don't think there's been one. There has been one recently. My dad's lamb over 10 and 2s versus 5 and 1s, but it was the same concentration. So it wasn't a problem, but
Yes.
I've been down to 5 milligrams and 5 mLs, which was just too much. So
Yeah, there is an IV listed
IV,
here.
that's
Yes,
right.
it's the 0.1 per kilo slow push is on here. If they have to give it IV. Okay, if there's no further discussion, I'll move this one to a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. And are there any abstentions? All right, motion passes. Moving on to the next one is the airways. If I can get a motion to discuss this next action item.
So moved.
So this next training is the sort of similar pediatric airway training. Goes through some information about upper airway obstruction, some anatomy and physiology, the use of airway adjunct, specific differences in, airway opening maneuvers, and then some medication administration. Again, dosages would mirror what's in the TDTGs currently. The IM epinephrine, dexamethasone and methylprednisolone dosages, and then the albuterol as well. Yes.
I have two things.
Yes.
One is on, I have it as slide 50. There's no numbers on here. It's the CPAP or PPAP.
Yeah.
The first bullet at the bottom says discontinue an IPV for shock or altered LLC, and then below that it says discontinued. So we need to knock off that one line.
Okay.
And then the other thing in here is some of these examples back here. They use the term diagnosis, which is not in the scope of practice of EMS providers in there. And I know what they're trying to get at, but using that word is just kind of.
Where's that at, Brent?
It's back in the examples, the patient cases.
Oh, cases in the back.
Yeah.
Where do you see that at?
It's in the yellow. Looks like
It's in yellow.
Amber, like-
Says diagnosis question, and I just think we should switch to
Impression?
different terms. Impression.
Impression?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wherever that pops up in there, there's a couple of places.
Where the segment, moving impression. Yeah, I like that. The same thing, but okay. Thank you, Brian.
There is as an additional reference to make these published along with this, there is the position statements from any of PM's pre-hospital pediatric respiratory distress and airway management. That's very well written and kind of gets specific techniques, putting NIPD, bagging. I might be just a nice reference to add in with this as well.
Yeah, I like that. I think there's some information in the airway compendium that they put out a couple of years ago as well. That might be good for pediatrics. Okay.
I didn't capture that. I did. Okay. This is slide 16.
All right. Any more discussion on this one? If not, I'll take it to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. All right, end of session. Okay, motion passes. A couple more items. The next one is to discuss scheduling a second meeting for work group to create fall prevention mitigation training. I'm trying to remember where we ended the last discussion.
I'm trying to get another one scheduled and.
Okay. Yeah, we had some discussion. I think we started to put together some information, but I don't think we need to. Yeah. 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 Okay. If anyone is interested in joining that work group and joining in on the discussion, go ahead and send your info to Shelley and she can add you to the list. And you guys can definitely join it for the second work group. We have a product that's started, thanks to Gail for providing some slides to start with, but we need to finish that one up. So if you're interested, get us your info. The next item is our standing item. It's just our list of curriculum for review. I actually haven't been through this in a little while. I don't think I have anything specific to add.
There's a number on here that are 2023s and coming up 2024. Do we need to? There's quite a few on 2023 here.
Should push off the sleep and brewery paces. Those are pediatric specific. Maybe
Yeah.
it's help with that.
Have them review that one.
Yeah.
The other one.
I think that just the one feedback is that we definitely realized what we tried to do with PACES is bring some PACES representatives to this group. Just because there isn't as much EMS representation on PACES. And so we want to make sure that we were having a lot of ping-ponging back and forth with the education curriculum, that they were putting out curriculum, but we want to make sure that we have kind of that switch review. So probably better to still review as part of this committee, but get some PACES to help with that.
This is Sandy. Do we want to look at the one for sepsis things as some of the requirements have changed in the central regional guideline?
Is that a motion, Sandy?
No, I was just saying.
I heard Sandy volunteer. She wants to volunteer. That's what I heard.
We do have a couple that are up for review. The sepsis is certainly could be one of them, and the brewery. If anyone would be interested, we certainly could take a motion to maybe review those two as our next item.
I will move to do that. This is Sandy.
For the sepsis, Sandy?
Yes.
I have a motion for to form a work group to review the sepsis guideline. Do I have a second?
Second.
Let's vote on this one. Yeah. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any abstaining? Okay, that motion passes. If anyone else wants to join Sandy and me, we will review the sepsis guidelines from sepsis training.
And the other option as well, with some of these, especially if there's something that's grouped in the field that maybe there's necessarily new changes or updates on, it's possible also just to kind of review and provide feedback of, I reviewed this, I don't recommend any changes, just come back with some of these. Because I don't know that there's much that's changed on handling CPR. And that's something that we just wanted to make that a resource out there, and we kept that curriculum on for some dues. That might be a good offline review, and then if you see something that does need updating, maybe that committee versus having a work with each one.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I'm happy to do that if you want to send the hands-on CPR.
Okay, thank you. Happy to do that. And maybe we'll do the same one for the brewery. I also don't know that one changed significantly, so we can certainly do those two offline and chat about the sepsis one. Okay, that's all I have on the agenda today for discussion and action items. If you have any additional agenda items for the next meeting, feel free to touch base with Shelley and to be able to get those on the agenda. The next thing I have is a call to the public. Anyone has any specific announcements? Hearing none, I'll move on to upcoming events. In your agenda here, you'll see that there's several upcoming events between now and March listed on your agenda here. One that's not on here is the NAEMSP conference in January. So that one's in Austin. I think a bunch of us will probably be going, so if anyone else is interested to register for NAEMSP, it's a great conference. The Bureau's website also has some information on conferences and upcoming events. Our next meeting will be March 21st at 10:30. And with that, we can adjourn today's meeting. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Date your next